Hey guys, so here's a video, a little, I guess, inside the music thing, how I made my track Genesis. So here is I'm just going to get right to it. Here is the project. It's got tons of tracks and stuff, but we'll get through it. All right, I guess I'll just show you guys the part just from the breakdown through. I'll show you guys the intro later, but yeah, here we go.
Let's go.
Sweet. So the first thing that you guys hear is this little melody thing right here. And all that is a sample that I found in one of my sample packs. And I just used Ableton's instrument Simpler. Basically, I just found a sample that I liked and I dragged it into Simpler. And now that sample can be played on my MIDI keyboard down here. And so that was the original one right there. But I like that sound and I just put some MIDI information, and this is what it sounded like. Now if you notice, this little boom sounds like a drum, but it's actually the sample. It's just super low, which is pretty sweet. And yeah, I got some OTT on here, some sausage fattener. This sample was actually kind of problematic for me. There was like a lot of weird white noise in the sample, and I just needed to like do a lot of crazy editing. Let me see if I could show that to you guys. Yeah, so here, so for that low part, I don't know if you can hear that high end. It's like right here, but I had to kind of cut it out, because when I master it and when I throw compression on there, it really emphasizes that high end hiss, and I do not need that there. So that's what this little EQ is doing. And this right here is actually an interesting thing. So instead of sending my main melody to a send here to like a reverb or a ping pong or anything like that, I actually made the send inside of the actual track. I picked this up from producer Kashmir, and so basically what is on here is a ping pong delay, and to set it up, it's really simple. You just basically, I'll show it to you guys real quick. You find a sound that you like, or an effect that you like. So say I want to add a reverb. So here's our reverb. So see, if you guys put it all the way wet right here, it's gonna the sound is gonna completely disappear. So what I do is I group this reverb. So right click, group, or you could do Command G, whatever you're used to. And you're gonna click on this little icon right here, which is basically the chain area of this group. And what you're gonna do is you're gonna create another chain. And basically now you have two of these signals going through. One is going through this reverb, and the other is just going dry. And so now, so we have our reverb and we have our dry signal right there. So that's just like a little tip you guys could use to really expand, your creative ideas. Anyways, let's get through this track. So that's that sample.
Let's go.
Before I get to the build-up, let's talk about this section right here. So let's talk about my kicks. Right here, I have a top kick, which is just the high end, the tick, the little tick part in the kick that that kind of punches through the mix. And then here, I have another tick. I just layered them together. Honestly, a lot of these things, it's a trial and error thing. Sometimes two of them together works better than alone. So that is that. And then I have for my that little. So the low end of this track is Spire, which is a sweet plugin that I've been using a lot in my tracks. Basically, it's the preset Kung Fu. I've changed a few things on here. Fixed up I think I fixed the saturation on there. But yeah, presets, I'm always down to use them because I like to work fast. And if I have an idea, I need to get it quickly. And if I spend time creating a sound, I'm just going to lose it. But creating sounds is fun sometimes too. But basically, yeah, so that's the saw. I've got compression, saturation on there, emphasizing those mids a bit. And for the sidechain, I love to use kickstart whenever that comes in. So there's that.
Let's go.
We got a hi-hat. And to make this hi-hat kind of cut through the mix a bit, I have a transient master. Have a shaker, shakers, clap one. Clap two. Then I have this cool off snare beat. So when you play them all together, and then I have this loop actually down here as well. So this loop, I found it in one of the sample packs, and the whole thing is that right there. But I cut out the claps and the kick, so I just was left with the hi-hats. And together the percussion sounds like this. So this off snare, I called it, does that which is super housey, and I love doing this. Like if I get rid of it, it really loses that groove that you're looking for. And if you guys noticed here, I have this thing called my white noise. You could probably not even hear it, but in speakers in my studio, it basically just kind of fills out the spectrum a bit, just that high end and stuff. So I like to add that in my breakdowns. I like to add it in my drops. And then I have another hat going. All right, and I got this little vocal thing.
Let's go.
Chords, which is basically massive. One of them is massive. And then the other one is also, this one's also massive. Layering is super important in dance music especially. And then I have this little melody on top. Just layering on top of the melody that you heard in the breakdown. It adds a lot. If I get rid of it, it's needed there. So there's that, and then I have these sweet future sounding chords. So there's the MIDI for it. I played these in on my MIDI keyboard, and then I just came in and quantized it, all that good stuff. This is Serum. This is a sound, actually I created this one from scratch. So I do create samples sometimes. But yeah, so there's that one. OTT, sausage fattener. Yeah. Let's see what else we got. I guess we can move on to the build. Alright, I'm gonna stop right there. So here, actually, before I get to the build up, there's this one part I missed. It's probably the most important part of the whole track, actually. It would be this bird sound. So the original sample sounds like this if I take off all the EQ and stuff. Actually, let me show you what it sounds like when I expand it. So basically I took this sample and so when I was listening through this thing, I heard that bird thing in there, and I just took the sample and I clicked warp, and after that I just pitched it down to, what was it, 24? Yeah, I pitched it down 2 whole octaves. Okay, and then what I did after that, I just threw it, I just cut it up and made it work. So there's that for you guys. I add this EQ on here to just get those harmonics that are cutting through. I don't need any of the high end, I don't need any of the low end of that sample. I have a little bit of compression, and I also use this thing a lot. I think it's a compressor as well. It just beefs up the sound a lot. So there's that. Alright, now let's get to the build real quick. So in this build, I have a few things going on. So I have a snare roll, a few of them. So if you guys notice, there's like a huge change in sound, and I'll show you how I made it. I made that kind of tension come in. But snare drum is basically a drum rack in Ableton. If you go to Instruments in Ableton and click on Drum Rack and just drag it in, you'll get a drum rack, and I'm just using a snare, and I'm using MIDI here, and then basically it's just cutting it up in half as it moves along the timeline. This snare has EQ on there. It's got some compression, another EQ to emphasize the punch, OTT. What do I have this utility here for? So yeah, that utility basically just controls the gain, the volume in one of the builds over there. Okay, the second one is actually a sample. And layered together, it just sounds really nice. And I just have this little pluck, just kind of going up in pitch. Then I have this riser, it just goes up. This guy. And that guy. I use this one a lot. I would sometimes make my own risers. Just take a sample, just take a synthesizer and just throw on the pitch all the way to 12 and just pitch it up. But to save time, I sometimes just use samples, and that's what happened there. Now we introduce the brass section. And this is sampled with another, it's sampled with this, or it's layered with this sample. And we introduce that. And here we have some interesting things. So basically I took an iPhone and just recorded some random stuff, just random words, and it sounded really cool in this track. So this is what they sound like. You probably didn't hear this in the track, but this is in there. So I'm introducing those little weird tiki-tiki-taku things. So now I have also like some sound effects, some sweeps and crashes. I don't think I'm going to go into too much detail about that, but it's just like white noise. Just a clap with lots of reverb, a crash. Now the biggest thing in this build is actually this awesome plugin I recently got, Endless Smile by Data Life. And this thing is amazing. Let me show you what it does. Let me show you an A-B. So this is without it. Now this is with it. Basically, it's just like a secret weapon of, crazy builds. And they have a lot of different presets you can use, but this one's pretty sweet. You could really go over the top with it. But yeah, I have that going on in this track. I have it automated so that it's only turned on during the builds. I don't want it in my drops. So now let's move on to the drop. So in the drop, before the drop, I have this other bird sound, which is basically the same process I used in the other one. Just found a sample and pitched it 12, pitched it down 12, or basically a whole octave. EQ'd it, OTT, and then this awesome plugin by Waves. So there's that, and I got some drum fills. And so let's get to the main part, the kick drum. So I've got a lot going on in my kicks. So the main sound that you hear throughout the whole thing is that kick drum. So I have the top layer, the tick, I like to call it. Then I have the low end here. Now, for every single one of the drop, so boom. So for every single hit of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 1, I have 2 layered other kick drums, so like very hard house kind of stuff. It just adds a lot of like emphasis on the one, which I really liked in this track, so that was pretty sweet. Same thing, I got the white noise. I mean, you can't really hear it. That's what it sounds like. And I have it side chained. I have the Nicky Romero kickstart. So that's sweet. Alright, now let's move on to the main sound in the drop, which is these Latin loops, these Latin drums. And if you've probably guessed it, that is a sample, but I had to warp it and get all the timing right on it. And I've done a lot of processing, so I just EQ'd it, cut out the low end, because I really don't need all of that low stuff. That's just gonna mess up my mix. And I have an OTT. This is what it sounds like without it. With it. Be careful when you use OTT, especially with the high end. It really emphasizes. I usually just bring down the depth and bring down the high end on OTT. And I've got a vintage filter, or a vintage warmer, just pushing the drive a bit. I have a compressor, an EQ, just bringing up some of the crispiness, and the same plug-in there. It doesn't add a lot, but it's there. And I layered it with those cool vocal things I recorded. And so layered with those drums, it just sounded really cool. Like if I got rid of them. I mean, it could still work, but I don't know, it just sounded cool with them. And here I have those big brass hits. Boom. So, let me just play the whole song. Sweet. So in the second half of the drop, I have these big screech kind of synths, which is a sample I had in my sample packs, and I just made sure it's in the right key and all that good stuff. I EQ'd it, added some of this stuff again, and I have the same kind of process here with the reverb. And yeah, so I have the Valhalla vintage verb for this guy. Just makes it huge. I'm also sending it to another reverb, so I've got reverbs on reverbs on reverbs. But you know, it might not look right, but if it sounds good, it sounds good. What do you gotta do? And I have some other processing on this guy as well. So I have OTT, sausage fattener. Just to add some grit. And it is sidechained with this kickstart plugin as well. Now, towards the end of this drop, I have kind of like a little build up into the second breakdown. So here I have some snare builds, and I have the same Endless Smile plugin working here as well, bringing up that intensity. Now I introduce a different kind of like vibe in the kicks. And here it kind of goes harder, so I introduce a 4 on the floor. So there's that. Let's go into the second breakdown. So I have those bird sounds here. And here I have some cool fills and like a little DJ kind of spin back thing.
Let's go.
So second breakdown, kind of basically it's the same thing as the first. It just has a little bit more energy. Honestly, I kind of went through all the sounds. It's the same sounds. This guy opens up a bit more. So I'm basically automating the filters here a bit. So it's automating this guy right here. But I didn't want to go over the top with it, so I just... Same thing here, we got this build introducing the little clickety-clackety vocal things. I also have this saw bass that I had. I had it rising in pitch. So there are a few ways you can accomplish like a rising kind of thing in Ableton. You can either go straight into right here in the parameters section, and you can select your bass or whatever, and you can just automate. You select what you want to automate. So in this case, it'd be the pitch, and I would just click in what I want to do and just do that. Or another way you can do this is if you go into the MIDI clip. Our MIDI usually looks a lot like this, but there's another section here, the envelope section, and you can select pitch bend right here, and you can automate just the MIDI clip itself. So I did it like this here. It's just easier for me to keep track and stuff. And so let's get into the second drop. Alright, so this second drop is a little different than the first one. It's got a lot more energy, basically. I basically just made, instead of the tribal drums the main thing, I made this screech synth. Okay. I made the screech synth kind of the main thing. But I still have the drums in here, but I cut them up like crazy here. So I also added more bird sounds. So basically it kind of works as a hi-hat. Sounds like a car alarm. So yeah, it's just basically lots of cutting and editing. Lots of sampling. And here I have the drums, the tribal drums. And they're just cut up like crazy. They sound kind of choppy when you isolate or solo it. But layered together with everything, with those vocal things, yeah, it works. So here I took the brass hits and this synth and I just reversed them. Just kind of sucks you into the other part of the track. You just basically, to reverse a sample, you select, double click on it, and you click this little reverse button right here, and it will reverse your sample for you, which is pretty awesome. And here I kind of made the birds kind of made them more intense. And I have this little sound here from Serum. So in the beginning, just like a little layer, a little texture to the track. So yeah, it's not that complicated, honestly. It's just putting together the right pieces. The drums kind of change up a bit here. They do boom, 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 boom. So that is there. Honestly, guys, that's the track. I mean, going out from the drop to the outro. I mean, it's just basically some percussion. Just slowing down. Yeah. I guess I could show you guys how I kind of like organize my tracks. So basically, at the very top here, I have my kick and bass. So I have all of my kicks and all of my low end, the bass sounds. All of those guys are going to be in one group. The second group is going to be my percussion. Has all my percussive elements and all my snare builds, all of that stuff. I have vocals separately as well. All of my synths are separate, so anything that sounds like a synth, that's got melody, harmony, harmonics, anything like that will be in my synths group. Sometimes I'll even split up the synths into other groups. If there's like a really big kind of drop with lots of layers, I would group that together, and I would compress it individually just to glue them all together. And I have my sound effects here in a separate group as well. All of my crashes, all of my whooshes and swooshes. So yeah, that's my track. I guess I'll show you a little bit of the processing in terms of like sends and stuff. So I have a small reverb here. I send a lot of my drums through this garage reverb. You can barely hear it, but I love doing that with my percussion. It just adds a lot of space in my claps and hi-hats and all that stuff. I have a ping pong delay, which is Ableton's ping pong delay. I also process these. So in this garage reverb, I'm cutting out the low end, and I have it sight chained as well, just to work together with the kick better. Same thing with the ping pong. I have a long reverb, probably somewhere in the drop. Probably not. There it is. So yeah, I have a long reverb here, which is Valhalla Vintage Verb. I love this thing. It's great. It's only $50, so check it out. And I have here another reverb. What is this guy doing? So yeah, this is another reverb, just big. Let's see. So basically, I just have some claps here in the drop. It just adds a big room in there. Yeah, so that's just for that clap, actually. I don't think I'm using it anywhere else. Yeah. And I actually have a compressor on this guy. Wait, no, I don't. Okay, so now moving on to, so what I like to do what is called parallel compression. Basically, I send my percussion, my kicks, and all this kind of stuff into this one, which is my drums parallel compressor. Basically, it's just super aggressive compressor. I mean, it's very subtle, but it just adds punch to the track. Same thing with the instruments. It just kind of brings them forward. So yeah, that's basically Genesis. I don't think there's anything else that I haven't covered in this track. Yeah, a lot of sampling, lots of, just taking random sounds, bird noises, all that good stuff, and just having fun. Honestly, music should always be an enjoyable thing. So yeah, guys, I hope you enjoyed this little walkthrough of my track Genesis. Check it out on Spotify, iTunes, Apple Music, all that good stuff, SoundCloud. Kevin Aleksander. Aleksander with a KS, not a X. So yeah, guys, I hope you enjoyed this, and I'll see you later. Bye.